the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer. Someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer. Baseball in the summer.
The BrockvMac Legendary Rivals podcast, and I am beaming today because across from me or beside me here is the amazing, very positive and bright catcher from Burlington and one of the stalwarts of the Brock team, Nathan Kupusa. How are you, Nate? It's been a long time.
It's good to see you, buddy. I'm great. It's nice to hear everyone's voices and see the little videos and stuff and bring back great memories. And thanks for doing this too, Mike.
Well, the two of us would be probably on some sort of tropical island somewhere if we would have invented a cure for our hairlines. But we had a little more hair back in the day,
Oh God! Well, I do remember losing my hair, and it was a long time ago. Let's just say it was more than 30 years ago.
Well, I listen, so why don't we just start with where you are today and kind of what you're up to, because I think, it's going to surprise some people to hear what you're up to. And I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Well, I'm married. I have a 12-year-old son. That's, he turns 12 in June, and I live in Dundas, Ontario. And, I've kind of stayed in the kind of local area and stuff like that. Haven't really traveled too far, but I've been in financial services, and I own an investment brokerage, and I have for, I'm going to say, since I graduated university, I got right into it there. And we're just living the dream. And my wife and I have a place up north, and I spend most of my summer on the weekends up there, and it's been great. And just living the dream, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, I think, between yourself, myself, and Tim Topping, we're all going to be on the hook here for cottage weekends. And, and Peters is going to have his Airbnb in Florida ready, and Daryl Houston ready to host us in Tofino. So got a pretty good network. It sounds pretty good. Like we've got a pretty good network of parties outside of this game here. Nate, and we'll touch, that's got to be a complicated area. Particularly, you've had to navigate some interesting things in that, almost 30 years. We've had a couple of financial meltdowns. We've had a period here of high inflation. We've had the pandemic. So we'll talk about your love of numbers and how that ties to what you were taking at Brock at the time. Well, why don't we go before that and, your story before Brock? Where did you grow up, and kind of how did you get into baseball and, siblings, parents, those kinds of things, and your influences on becoming a really great catcher?
Okay. Well, I grew up in, originally I was born in Windsor, Ontario, and I was actually born in Riverside, which a lot of people know Windsor for Riverside, but there's a big baseball factory out of there. But I was moved when I was young, about 3 years old, to Burlington, Ontario. And that's where I stayed virtually my entire life until my parents moved after they retired and stuff like that. But I ended up actually getting into baseball when I was about like 6 years old. And it was one of the neighbors, actually, believe it or not, when I lived in Burlington, that said to my father, "Hey, listen, this kid can hit a baseball and can throw a baseball. So you might want to try him in that sport." And then I played 1 year a house league. And then I was able to, I made the rep T-ball team a year later. And then that just sort of led into the sort of the baseball career that I had, and then played in Burlington the majority of my time. Spent time on different teams in Burlington. Let's just say I was never really built for speed, but I was on the hot corner for a period of time. And then when I played a little bit of shortstop, and that was when I was about 16 years old, and then had a knee injury, believe it or not. And I went from above average speed to where my speed stayed at below average. And then eventually I got moved to catcher. And and that I spent probably since probably 16 years old, all the way through college and university at Brock and stuff like that, and then some inter-county too as well. So that's sort of in a Cole's notes. And I had some great coaches along the way. Honestly, I really, really did. I had people that they were also fathers, but they were truly, truly dedicated. I played with some great baseball players out of Burlington. And it was really, it was a passion. Honestly, I still, I was talking to Fabio Del Rio actually, and I happened to meet Fab in the elevator in one of the offices that I had. And he got me back into it when I was 37. And I remember stepping onto the field for the first time since university, and I was glowing like a kid. Just all those awesome feelings of being a baseball player. It was just flooded in. And then when I started playing, reality hit, and I knew I wasn't 18 anymore. So, but that kind of gives you a little bit of the Cole's notes on that one.
Well, Nate, let's go back to Burlington. You know, did you play in high school as well? Like, you know, I think. So tell me a little bit about playing in high school, because it was, you know, Burlington was a bit of a hotbed for high school baseball. You know, the Cheats, you know.
I went to a high school that was named Nelson High School. And Nelson, if I think about Nelson High School, in my first year, I tried out for the baseball team in grade 9. And all of the players were seniors and everything else. And during the tryout, I was the only guy to hit a home run in the tryouts, and I got cut. And
that seems like the worst decision ever, right?
Yeah, well, and you know what? I mean, it is what it is, and it was just purely because I was a grade 9, and the whole team was actually, they had some unbelievable players too as well. And one of the guys went on to be a CFL legend by the name of Steph Potasic. And people would know him because I believe that he's still the coach for maybe McMaster University football. But there were some great players in there. But I learned a lot too as well. And so my high school team in grade 10, there was myself, a couple other guys that went to Brown, a guy by the name of Dan Caron was there too as well. And really we were pretty good, and we were pretty competitive too as well. And I played most of the time. I played about third base at that point, and I was a catcher and stuff. But because a lot of those grade 13s left, we were able to get right into playing, and it was great. And we had a very successful kind of baseball team. And by the time we hit grade 12, 13, our starting lineup really, we had probably 6 guys that were going on scholarships. Down to the U.S. Or for something else. Like one guy went to Notre Dame. He played hockey there. The next guy went to school in Ohio. Joel was there too as well. Joel Garton was there. Tim Bonehill was there. There was a whole handful of myself, and it was good. In our last year, we were in the Prentice Cup. And we were playing against York Memo. We lost to York Memo in the semifinals, but the day before we beat them 9-1. And that was the closest that we ever got to actually winning the Prentice Cup. But we had lots of fun. We had like I say, just a great group of guys, actually. And I forgot one guy in particular, Joe Colomeco. Some of them might remember his name from the area, but he played he did sign with the Yankees organization for a period of time as well. So kudos to those guys. And really, they just were guys that I'd played baseball with since I was kind of growing up. A lot of those guys were younger than I was by 1 year, and some of those guys were the same age and stuff like that. So we were familiar with a lot of the guys. we had some successes too as well. We won the 2 years in a row. We won the Corbett's high school tournament too as well, and I still remember this to this day. And I bumped into a guy probably, I'm going to say 15 years after, and it was one of the fathers from the team, and he said, "Nathan, I still remember the day that you guys we're playing against Brampton Centennial, and you guys went back to back to back home runs to win the tournament." And that was kind of one of my highlights of high school, and I had lots of fun. I enjoyed playing with those guys, and they just made us better players too. But our high school team was good, and then our rep team was good too as well.
Yeah, and Mark Kasoyan spoke about being at a different, he was at a different high school, I think, in Burlington. So, there was a big Burlington influence, which we'll get to as we kind of advance into the Brock part of your career and those kinds of things. Nate, did you tell me a little bit about the transition to catcher? Because, catching is such a different position than other positions on the field. Did you enjoy it, and what did you find challenging about it coming from
I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it a lot, actually. I think what was I enjoyed baseball, so I enjoyed all aspects of baseball, and I enjoyed all the positions of baseball. And so having a good understanding of the different aspects of those allowed the transition to be fairly smooth. And I was quick, but not fast, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I had pretty good hands too as well. And as I got older, I worked a lot on my sort of arms strengthening and so on and so forth. So which again made it a little bit better. But the transition was, I'm not going to say it was overly difficult, because I would say I just really liked baseball and loved playing all the positions and stuff like that. And again, I'd say my biggest challenge ever, regardless of what it was my running speed. And so, I mean, not like I was I did know guys that were slower than me, but,
Yeah.
but it was I would say the transition was relatively easy. And that transition happened, like I said, when I was about 16. And I had some showcases, and it was some showcases out of the I'm trying to remember the tournament, but the Ontario tournament, the big tournament, I think they called them the selects or something like that, or the finals or whatever it was. And they some of the representatives from some of the other teams and major league teams and stuff like that wanted to see me in the catcher's position, because we had already had some good quality third basemen and stuff like that, and they wanted to see me behind the plate. So that's where they felt the strengths were, and that's where we kind of stayed there. And there was a good spot for me there. And I worked well with some of the pitchers that we had too as well. I had some really, really great pitchers too as well. So again, knowing about the game, learning about the game, and then also having some good pitchers that you worked well together. And that's how it happened.
Yeah, it's also kind of a natural leadership position because of the amount of influence you have on the game. And I think the other thing is, you have to manage pitchers who are a unique world. Let's be honest. They are.
Yeah, for sure.
Performance mentality, but some of them are, you have to go out there and be their psychiatrist. Other ones, you got to go out there and give them a good kick in the ass. And other ones,
some of them I could say, you used to be able, for some of the guys, I could say whatever, and it didn't matter. They were doing what they wanted to do.
Yeah, pitchers can be stubborn too. That's for sure.
I love it because they're competitive, right? So
yeah, and you just got to manage that, right? Like it's just you can't take offense to someone, as long as they're out there trying and they don't give in, right, mentally or emotionally.
Sure. They have a fight.
Yeah, and so you're obviously going to high school in Burlington, and it comes up to your grade 13 year, and how do you at this point, do you know what you're going to take in school? And do you remember the 3 universities you applied to? Because we all would have had the same process at this point.
Well, obviously I applied to Brock. And let's just say my scholastic ability was, I had to work hard. Let's just put it that way. Nothing came to me even. And I'll lead into that answer because in our grade 13 year, I didn't go to one math class in grade 13. during the spring season because our baseball team was competitive, and my last class was math. And so it took me a while to get my grade 13 credits for mathematics because I was never in it. Sorry, and repeat your question again there, Mike, before I.
Well, first off, that's big to admit when you're, when you're hailing people. Which do you remember the three schools and what was driving?
I think Guelph was one of them, too, as well. And at the time, I was dating a girl that I went to high school with, and she was at Guelph, so I think that was another one. And I don't recall the third, to be honest with you. My focus was kind of like I'd spent some time at Brock with high school friends and stuff like that. I really enjoyed the school. I enjoyed the downtown. So other than the U.S., that was pretty much where I was going.
Yeah, no, that's good that you had some exposure to the campus before, and so obviously you go there, and was your first year in res? Were you?
I was in the Village my first year.
Oh, you're one of the few that lucked out and got the Village, right? Everyone else, poor Simmons was stuck at the Queenston residence, the one that was out near the hospital.
Actually, I do remember that.
Oh, and I felt bad for him because they'd eat hospital food every day, and the Village was clearly the best of the bunch at that time. Tell me about life in the Village in your first year at school.
Well, it was I enjoyed it thoroughly. I mean, one of my roommates, Tim Sullivan, great guy. He had tried out for the Brock team. He was a left-handed guy from Etobicoke. He didn't make the team, but he enjoyed it and stuff like that. And so I was lucky. And then 2 doors down from me was a guy from Burlington that I knew. Well, I knew through hockey, but we weren't actually kind of buddies until we got to university. And it worked out great because we knew the exact same people. And so it made the transition to the university really, really, really smooth. The Village, obviously, there's lots of people, lots of different dynamics. It was a lot of fun. I mean, the Village was what it was. And I'm glad I stayed there my first year at university because I met a whole slew of great people that allowed me to have different locations to stay as I stayed in university and having different roommates throughout that time and stuff like that. So it was fun. It was a lot. It was actually very good, actually.
Yeah, Nate, what were you taking in school? Do you remember what you took?
I took environmental policy and human geography. Believe it or not.
My God, I would have never predicted that in a million
exactly.
years. So
it's so funny. It's so funny because the environmental policy, I think it was like kind of the Bob Ray days, if I remember correctly. And they thought something was going to go on there. And I kind of envisioned myself to be kind of like an environmental guy and stuff. And then the human geography. Like I say, I think it was just something that I ended up adding in there because I enjoyed some of the courses. And of course, now that I've spent 27 years or 28 years in financial services, it's absolutely unrelated to what I went to school for.
Well, that's par for the course for some of us, for sure.
Yeah, of course, right.
I think Brian Simmons also took some form of geography, at this point, there's no baseball on the radar. We're all just kind of living a typical university experience where you're meeting people and, the Brock campus kind of allows you to see all those people all the time because it was small at that point, smallish anyway.
Yeah, of course.
Did you have a favorite, and I always ask this question of the guys that were there, in particular before there was baseball, because that severely curtailed our social life.
Yeah.
Did you have a couple of favorite bars that you went to and that you particularly had a good time?
I like London Arms.
Okay.
Which is always good. I did like, I'm trying to think, it used to be the one that was right close to the downtown student res.
Gordon's and Shooters, I think.
That was a good one. And then there was also another one. I think that was maybe Big Bucks later on or something.
Big Bucks, yeah.
Yeah. Those are the kind of the three, I think. I did like the campus one. What's the name of the campus one?
Isaacs?
Yeah, Isaacs. Yeah, that was good too as well. But that was just kind of in your first year and doing that. But those were kind of like the couple places that I like to go. And it was also too because my roommates like to go there too as well, so it made it easy. I had 1 year I had all Brock University lacrosse players. I was the only baseball player, and they were all lacrosse players for the university. And so I kind of just was kind of like a tag along for the lacrosse guys and stuff like that for a period of time. So
I can't imagine what it would be like living with all lacrosse players. It's
it was like living with hockey players.
That's something coming from baseball players, right? It's just kind of like we're snobby, right? But so you're obviously there for, at least 1 year. What do you remember what year you started? So I'm trying to line this up against when
I think it was the second year I started.
Okay.
And I did play 1 year at Guelph University.
Okay.
And I was in grade 13. My first year, my university girlfriend was going to Guelph. And I just happened to be like walking down. I don't know if anyone knows Guelph, but I was walking down the hallway of South University, South Campus or South Residence. And they had a sign on the wall saying that they were trying to get baseball players for Guelph University baseball.
Okay.
And so wow. I just picked up the phone and called the guy. And I said, listen, I'm not in university, but my girlfriend goes here and I'm thinking about coming to the school. And he said, well, he goes, why don't you come out? And then so I went out and played a season with him, actually. Yeah. Most people didn't know that.
Guess not. You're supposed to have attended the school.
Yeah. And but the development of the university. It was really, I think there was only like maybe Niagara College, Durham College. I don't think even Brock had a team in at that point.
No, there is. So this would be 1994.
Yeah.
So Guelph, McMaster, Durham College, and McGill were the only 4 teams in the country.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And, now that the scandal is exposed that they had a grade 13 playing from, it was, I laugh all the time because Ted and I ran the league for a year and we wanted to put in eligibility requirements. Like you have to go to the school, like that's a thing. And then, McMaster had a guy, Scott Hughes, who's a great guy, but he played for 10 years because they didn't enforce, 4-year limits or 5-year limits on eligibility. So when you go to grad school and you go to med school or whatever, he just kept playing. And he played at McMaster for, I think, 6 years and then U of T for another 4. I'm like,
yeah, I can believe it.
What?
Yeah. That was it was funny. It's funny stuff. I tell you, the funny thing is because there was barely any teams, and I think we only played in the fall session actually at the time, and we played against a bunch of U.S. teams too as well.
What?
Yeah, we played because we had some tournaments and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and there were a lot of junior colleges out of Michigan that we played against, and I remember them kind of going like. After the game, one of the coaches came up to me and gave me his business card. And he goes, have you ever thought about the U.S.? I said, to be honest with you, I'm not even in university or college. And so I tell you, man, it was a funny experience. And the coach, I can remember the coach. I believe he was a farmer. And he had this red pickup truck of which he painted with a roller and in Guelph Griffin colors, the red and yellow. And I just remember sticking out like a sore thumb, but it was a lot of fun, actually.
Oh, my God. And you had to wear those horrific uniforms like Guelph had. My God, Nate. I had no idea. Like, this is coming out after 30 years, and it kind of – I'm glad that we actually didn't have high school players on our team at Brock. So, wow. Okay. So no transfer rules or anything because – you end up at Brock, and then eventually you're going to see in second year these banners and advertisements for a baseball club. Yeah, and do you remember dropping by the table? And Colin Tyler admits that he thought it was like a bunch of guys playing fantasy baseball or getting together and drinking and watching Jays games, but. I think those people we were able to talk to, we were able to say, look, we've got a team actually that we're attempting to field. But do you remember what prompted your decision to drop by the table?
I think it was just, again, I kind of like, I love baseball, and it was just kind of one of those things. And I kind of forego what the U.S. was going to go. And then I kind of had an idea that teams were doing it and stuff like that. But I'm not 100% sure. It was probably just me because I really enjoyed playing baseball. And then and I remember just going there and then doing the sort of the in the gym practices and stuff like that. And then it was great because I got to say is what a baseball team we had there, and what some of the abilities of some of the players they were athletes, and I could say they were athletes, or we were athletes at the time, as much as we could say that. Not so much now. I don't know about that, but and then when we got Coach McRae, and then you got Kemp too as well, and then you got just the other coaching staff that were supporting us and everything too as well. It just turned into something that was it was kind of as close as the Canadian team at that point could have delivered to be like a U.S. college team, and our proximity to the border.
Yeah, and that brings us obviously to the indoor workouts, and I'm sure, like it was all over the place. There were so many people in the gym. And I remember quickly isolating on there were a couple Burlington guys, yourself and Brian Simmons, and I remember Tim Sullivan quite well, actually, because good guy, really good guy.
Yeah, Sully, really good guy.
Yeah, liked him an awful lot. But we had to kind of get down from, there were 165 people at the first one.
Oh my God!
And you had people throwing in the gym 2 feet apart from each other with those rubber ball. We had to use rubber compressed balls, and it's all over. They're bouncing all over the place. Some people can't catch, some people can't throw. And luckily for us, the one coach, Briggs Jude, was there right from the beginning.
Oh, so yeah, for sure. That's actually, I have to say, he was one of the guys too as well. I forgot. I totally, not that I slipped my mind, but when I mentioned coaches, he was the one I was also going for too as well. And then obviously. And then you got also too with
Coach LePage and
yes,
Tim Topping, obviously, who would have had some dealings with us. So, but very early in the indoor workout stuff, Tim Topping is there before Coach McRae is, because McRae is still at Erie, and we get moved upstairs to the ballet studio to do all the pitching work. And as a catcher, you would have been there. We had a lot of catchers. There were like 6 catchers, which was crazy. Todd and I being one of them, who was this humongous guy. But I remember yourself, there was a kid named Shane Alderson from Peterborough, who was a real good guy. Matt King was obviously part of that. So we had a slew of catchers. But I can't imagine what it was like lining up in a ballet studio in front of mirrors and those softwood walls, and then having these supposed pitchers line up and throw with like a sidearm delivery and miss the catcher by 10 feet and throw it right through the wall. Like, you must have been thinking, what the blue hell have I landed in here?
Probably just par for the course, right?
Well, I mean, the good thing is fairly quickly it was easy to pick out the people who had actually pitched at a fairly good level, and we had some familiar faces there. So Chris Ebel and Rob Green and myself and Teddy and a few people that would have
Joel was Joel Garton. Joel was there too as well, wasn't he?
No, Joel came in the to training camp, but he was not there in the winter workouts. So but you end up making, obviously at this point, you're firmly on the team. We have about 35 guys that, survived the winter workouts. And how did you prep for the first real season? Do you remember meeting Coach McRae for the first time? That's another thing.
Normally the prep work was always happening, right? I was kind of always playing. I spent a lot of time in the gyms through the wintertime. And it was, a lot of times it was catching for guys that I had played in Burlington with that were kind of exceptional of what they were doing. And so we used to do a lot of workout, and then we would go, they would say, Nate's catching. So I'd go in and we'd catch, and we used to do it like every I think it was like every Tuesday we were in the gyms every Tuesday. And it would be the reason why it was like you're sitting there and you're throwing and the gym's getting smaller and smaller as the guy's bouncing the ball in front of you and stuff like that, or it's hitting the wall beside you. So it was just kind of, you kind of just get used to it, right? And just protect what you need to protect.
It's one way of looking at it for sure.
Well, yeah, well, that's it, right? And I mean, it's and you know what, it was just kind of that's how we kind of prepared. And I really like I love playing baseball, and so it was always hitting, going to the batting cages through the wintertime too as well. And like I said, I was fortunate enough when growing up in Burlington that we had a bunch of guys that really liked to play. And so we did that all the time, and we would go to batting cages and just have lots of fun and stuff. But I tell you, I wasn't really sure what to make out when I met Coach McRae for the first time. He was as close as a coach as I could get out of the United States, and I knew he was a very intelligent baseball man. With a passion for the game, but also a passion to win and succeed. And he reminded me a little bit of a sort of, and I've never been in the military, but a drill sergeant in the sense that if he says practice starts at 6 o'clock, it means it starts at 6 o'clock. It doesn't mean it starts at 10 minutes after that. And he really, I think, drew the best out of us as sort of players, and giving us an organization that was as close to the U.S. As what he could do and kind of prepare. And so I really enjoyed playing for him. And I'll be honest with you, it's that level of intensity and some of the things that came out of that man's mouth kind of blew my mind. And I'm sure you might ask me about them later on when we're interview and stuff like that. But yeah, he was I just remember, and he was all about business, and it was kind of refreshing, and it was for me, he was great.
It's a different real departure, particularly from rep ball, where the coaches know you, and if you're a higher profile member of a rep team, generally they're really easy going on you. Actually, they're kind of like well, it's like you've signed up for the team and you've been playing on the team for 10 years. So your spot's pretty much ready for you, right? Yeah. And I don't think Coach McRae ever wanted to make anyone feel like it was rep ball for sure. It was a pretty big departure. So that brings us to training camp. And I assume you play were you going home in the summer and just living in Burlington and working and playing and pretty typical preparation. And then we show up to this training camp 2 weeks before school starts. And
I remember that.
There were, again, we just ballooned back up to about 50 people at it from what I remember.
And that was when we were practicing in Thorold, right?
Yeah. And now all the coaches are there for the first time. So Coach Kemp and Coach Topping and LePage and Lounsbury and the whole 9 yards. And pretty intense workouts because we were doing 2 a day.
Yeah. And
now you've got more of your old Burlington contacts in the mix. Joel Garton has joined us, and Mark Kasoyan, and we have Simmons and Green and yourself and Ryan Thompson. Tell me a little bit about your first impressions of training camp, because that was totally different I'd never been to a training camp. And and then secondarily about your early interactions with Daryl Kemp, because now we've got a hitting coach, and I assume that you and Kemp probably got along very well because of your love of baseball. But tell me about your early impressions, and then Coach Kemp.
Well, again, it's I wasn't really 100% sure. I mean, the training camp itself could have been anything really at the end of the day. And again, it was just sort of because I enjoyed the baseball. I didn't really care what I was getting, right? And the camp was, I mean, I remember some things about it in the sense that if you'd ever been to and I know many of the guys on the team had been to, where you would go to like an evaluation and stuff like that. that it felt much like the evaluation that you would get it if you were just trying out for different teams and stuff, and maybe you were trying out for Team Ontario or trying for a different team, that they would put you sort of through the same evaluations and stuff like that. Again, the being in Thorold, I mean, some of my crazy things I remember about that is that backstop back there. There was a bee's nest in the backstop. And I remember one day people were like, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm getting stung by bees behind here." I remember at one point I had 5 bee stings on me. And the guys would go, "Right." And I said, "Well, I just got a catch. I got 5 bee stings." But I was just like, and I remember it vividly. My arms were all swollen and and but it was kind of like I kind of had an idea what a little bit of to expect and stuff like that. But again, it made it a lot more comfortable when there were so many guys. Like I spent so much, the guys that you mentioned from Burlington, I spent a lot of time playing ball with those guys, at least some form of the other. So it was really quite relaxing for me to be there and comfortable because there was those guys and stuff.
But
it made it easy.
Yeah, we had the 2 factions, right? There was an Oshawa group and there was a Burlington group that's almost half the team between the 2 of them. But I think for both sets, it was good for them to have people who had been at the school for a couple of years. Yourself and Rob Green had been at school already. So, it makes it easier and Brian Simmons as well, it makes it easier for Kasoyan and Joel to feel not lost in that pool of all these players. And, I think for all of us, we came out of those winter workouts and we didn't really have a hell of a lot of outfielders at the time. And now all of a sudden we have like Daryl Houston and Rick Bottomley and Andrew Tinish and Scott Juziak. That's something else. Like that is a lot of talent to arrive in one recruiting class if you think about it.
Well,
right?
a lot of speed, a lot of hitting. They could make a difference on the baseball field. And how they even got recruited is beyond me. Some of them was working, but we were fortunate enough to get those guys and stuff like that. And honestly, it's it made the team a lot stronger.
Yeah, and that brings me to one of the more unfortunate things of training camp. You get hurt. You hurt your groin because of a non-rostered guy, essentially, that forced his way into training camp. So the university had a policy that if he phoned and said, "I want to try out for a camp here," that the coaches weren't allowed to say, "No, it's a closed camp." So we had to do this duck walk thing, which was kind of like a lunge. And really the normal duration that you would do it would be from the foul line out to second base and back, because it's tough on your groin.
Yeah.
But we ended up, Coach McRae had come up with this thing to add a little competitiveness to our inter squad games of, if you lost, the other team determined what your punishment was. And you and I were on the losing team, and that guy said, "You'll do the lunge duck walk all the way around the entire field." And I believe that was the beginning of your groin separating from the bone. Yeah. And it's a big injury, right?
Yeah. It was a painful one. And I tell you, I still, to this day, it still comes up once in a while. And it's really, I wish I would have known back then what I know now, because after the baseball season, I was still kind of having I was still kind of having lingering pain from this thing. And I ended up going to my doctor, and he gave me a pill called Celebrex. Okay. And it was like a anti-inflammatory for arthritis and stuff like that. And I swear to God, within 2 weeks, it was gone. The injury was gone. And being as a catcher, it was every single time I squatted down or I tried to run, it was kind of got inflamed. And what it turned out to be the groin muscle pulled away from the pelvic bone, and then it grew a bone spur to join back up. And so every time I ran and moved, the bone spur would rub on the groin muscle. And that's what it turned out being. And but like I said, I wish I'd had those pills because it could have made a hell of a difference in that year and the future baseball years and stuff like that. But that was that was a tough thing because I battled it the entire year and I wasn't as healthy as I wish I would have been. I feel I could have contributed way more than what I did. But I mean, Matt Fletch came in and we had some. He picked up the slack, right? So we had some, and then I was able to get playing time when it would feel better, but it almost seemed like it would feel a little bit better, and then I'd take a step back, and it would feel better, and then I'd take a step back, and I got as close to healthy as I could when we went to the championship.
Yeah, I look, it's courageous to battle an injury. Nate, the fact that we had all that practice time, we had all those games in a very short amount of time. You yourself and Daryl Houston were two people that were battling injuries the entire time, and Robbie Green too had issues with his shoulders. Yeah. So I think that takes a lot of guts, and that says a lot about your character of wanting to be on the team and just keep trying. Yeah. And most people can't perform, and catching with a groin injury is a ridiculous thought process. But I think you deserve a big pat on the back for gutting it out.
Well, I appreciate it.
What do you remember about making the team? I think everyone knew you were going to make the team as a catcher, but you and Matt Fletcher and Matt King make the team. And Matt has spoken about you leading by being positive and helping those guys out. Was that just you trying to find other ways to contribute while you were battling the groin?
Well, I think what it was that I felt like I had a lot of experience, and I'd learned a lot. And I'd done camps at different places, and I'd done camps down in Florida and just learned a lot about it. Right. And I think that was, the guys' ability was there, but they just weren't 100% sure about how to call games and how to do different things and stuff like that. So I think that, it was just about helping the guys out really and helping them understand and helping the team try to be as successful as possible. Because I did learn a lot as I went through my years of baseball about calling a game and being able to position and doing all those things. And, it was really just, it was just who I was. I felt like even though I may not have been, but I felt like a little bit of an elder statesman a little bit, with a lot of experience from different players and playing in different leagues and all that kind of stuff. So, and again, it was easy because those guys were like sponges, right? They were wanting to learn. And I even think about one of the pitchers in particular I think about is Todd. And Todd, for a 6'5" guy that had never really pitched ever, if I remember correctly, and he had that unfortunate injury and stuff like that. But I think about that guy of just listening and just trusting the process, right, of how to call a game and saying, hey, if you throw the ball here, you won't have any issues. And then that kind of leads into the catchers and stuff like that too as well. But those guys were great. The catchers were great. They were kind of sponges and wanting to learn and wanting to be successful. And I know Matt Fletch in particular, he was battling the whole year, learning, which was kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's great, Nate, to hear about not only the influence you had over the other catchers who now get thrust into more playing time likely than they would have seen with you battling it, but also bringing along a guy like Todd who, is blissfully inexperienced, right? He's a guy that doesn't know, so he's just willing to do what he has either. Yeah, no, he doesn't. I say to him all the time, man, you're just a huge guy with a really good arm, and he was so deliberate. It was like watching a typewriter. His arm would go back, and then it would go forward, and I had a ton of fun watching Todd grow as a pitcher because he just had a great attitude. So
yeah, of course.
Again, so you're going to have some interaction with Daryl Kemp, who's a hitting coach that is a unique character to say the least. Tell me what you thought of Coach Kemp.
I thought he was smooth. The way he moved around the baseball field, it's like you knew that he knew what he was doing, right? And obviously, his work with the Blue Jays organization really brought him at a level that was someone you had to kind of look up to too as well. And he knew a lot about the game. And so, and him showing up in, I think it was a blue Cadillac, 4-door Cadillac, all the time. And then you kind of open up this massive trunk that he has, and it's all full of baseball gear and stuff like that. And later on to know that he worked I'm fairly sure that he worked in the same businesses that I got into in financial services. So it was really and I just remember as a hitting coach, him working on things. He had no problem working on in the batting cages with us for an extended period of time. He was able to look at our swings and maybe point out anything. He also, I think he had a really good understanding as what each of the hitters brought to the field or brought to the game. He knew that someone's ability was to do this versus that. And so I think that was one of the biggest things. And he actually helped me in there. And I think he helped me, I'm going to say about halfway through the season, I had found that my hitting, because I was I prided myself on hitting too as well. And I remember in particular that I felt like I was hitting the ball, but my power stroke was not kind of connecting at the same time. And I had made a modification in my back foot when I was hitting 6 months before. And I felt like it was going to help me kind of fire my hips through. But what it kind of did was disengage my hips and my lower body from my upper body. And so I wasn't hitting the ball as far. So I'm going to say it was probably a month or two before we actually went to Montreal for the championship that he made a modification to it, and it was like a light bulb went off. So I got a lot of kudos to him because I remember making that modification and him and I in the cage in Thorold talking about that. So, I was really we were lucky to have him on the team as far as I'm concerned. And his he had a little bit of a baseball swagger on the field. Someone to kind of look up to.
Yeah, he looks the part, and then he comes over and spits tobacco juice in your cleats and says, come with me, So, Nate, what do you remember about the season? I mean, you're battling an injury, but we do some pretty unique things. We're in the States quite a bit, and we win the Durham College tournament. We have a very good year. Any recollections specifically about the year and kind of some of the craziness that went with it?
Well, some of the things I remember about the team is that it was a gifted team. I knew that if we were it kind of reminds me a little bit about the high school team too as well, that if we were losing by any amount of runs, I knew that we had the ability to get the game back. And I remember how aggressive Coach McRae was with the guys like Daryl and his brother and even Tinish and the guys that were able to that could motor. And Richard Bottomley and all that kind of stuff. And the guys that could run and really make a difference by stealing a couple bases. And I remember Coach McRae, I think there was about 3 things that he used to say before every game, that we're going to do a hit and run, we're going to steal a base, and we're going to produce extra runs somehow. And I remember those sort of 3 things that were kind of like breaking the game down a little bit. But I knew that we had a strong team, and so you could just rely on the guys to do, if they did what they normally did, that we would be kind of successful. Now, as far as traveling, I honestly, it was, again, traveling down to the U.S., some of the funny things, and I think it was Andrew Tinish that was in the outfield, and we were in close to Syracuse, New York, and some kid was trying to shoot him with a pellet gun. In the
it was at Cooperstown, It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, that was a funny thing. And I remember playing against St. Bonaventure and Coach McRae, and we almost brawled them. And a scrap, and Coach McRae saying to the umpire, "Make sure you kiss me before you screw me." Yeah, and those are some of the small little things that kind of stuck out in my brain, and that made me kind of chuckle. But I'd never heard that line before, and so it was a pretty good one. But it was great to be able to travel to the different locations and play different teams. And I remember playing at Community Field. I think it was Community Field we were playing at in St. Catharines, and we were playing against Niagara University, I think it was, or maybe even Canisius. And there was the guy, he was an outfielder. His name was Kevin Glover, I think his name was. And he had hit 3 triples against us in one game. And I remember watching this guy run the base path. And it was like he had 3 or 4 different speeds. And that guy was one of the guys that we played against that really kind of stuck out in my brain and stuff like that. And I'm not sure what his baseball career went on to be after that and stuff like that. But I would say those are some of the kind of funny things that kind of stuck out. And again, it was just the baseball team was great because I knew that we could dig it out. And we had great managers, great coaches, and I knew that and great players, and I knew that we could do it virtually any time. So it was very disappointing, to say the least, when we lost in the final. And I think we lost 3-1, if I remember correctly, in the final.
No, it was 4-3. We lost in extra innings, and
okay, that's what it was. Yeah, and I remember I talked about Coach Kemp, and he came up to me. To me, I felt like -20, and I think Steve Atour was pitching too as well, and catching his ball when it was like he threw some gas and catching the ball when it was whatever, it was cold, and then Coach Kemp, I think we might have been tied up. Coach Kemp said to me, he goes, "Nate," he goes, "look for a high fastball and hit it out of here." So at this point, I had sat there and said, okay, my swing was feeling better and stuff. And I remember I got a good ball to hit, and I hit it opposite field, but the guy made a great catch on the warning track. And it was kind of like, and again, I don't remember who it was. I don't want to give him too much kudos because he did beat us. But I do remember certain things, and that was one of the things I do remember about Coach Kemp too as well.
Yeah, I remember that swing actually, and we'll get to Montreal here because there's more that we can track down there. But I definitely remember that moment because you got into one, and the guy's name was Bertrand Chabot, who was a big, tall, left-handed guy, about 26 years old, who'd been pitching in the Red Sox organization 2 summers before. He was at med school at Laval. There's not 100% guarantee that he was a full-time student. There was no eligibility. Clearly, if you're playing as a high school player, and Bertrand may be playing as a guy that's taken 1 or 2 courses, we don't know yet. But, and Nate, so one of the things about catching is you have to manage a diverse group of personalities. And our pitching staff was clearly a collection of different types of characters. So I'm going to name off some of the pitchers, and we'll get to you and I later. But, obviously we have Chris Ebel, and Chris is to me, the epitome of just a guy you love that inspires confidence out there. He's kind of unflappable, seems pretty with it and composed on the mound. And he was an older guy that also just came from a baseball playing family. So probably you're not having to do too much pumping of the tires or slowing down. It's just basically a technical kind of a thing with him, what pitch you want to throw in what situation. Yeah. But he had a knuckle curve, which was a bit of a weird pitch.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. He was Chris was a gamer in all sorts of ways. He was always around the plate. And he was easy to catch because he was all around the plate and stuff like that. I do remember that pitch, and a lot of guys never saw a pitch like that before too as well. And big presence, so he was big on the mound. He was an athlete, which makes it difference too as well. But I definitely remember that he could hit his spots, and he was a guy that was coming to. You knew that if he wasn't, sorry, my cat's trying to jump up on here. But he was, if I put my glove down, and he worked pretty good, and he was willing to, if we chose a pitch selection, he was willing to go with it, and he trusted his stuff.
It brings us to a guy who had a really good year for us, but was battling his arm injury, just physically, just trying to keep it together with baling wire. So the two of you made for, good friends from that perspective. But Rob Green was, a fourth year guy that really just pitched he's just a gutty guy. My God. He got hit in nationals with a line drive harder than anyone I've ever seen in my life. I think it pretty much blew him out to second base, and he collapsed, but then he got up and threw the ball to first and then collapsed again because he probably had no air in his lungs. And he had, I think, a couple of displaced ribs for years after that. So between the two of you had lasting injuries thanks to Brock. But tell me a bit about what you remember of Robbie.
Yeah, sure. Well, I knew him a long time. Because he was 4 years older than me, but his brother was my age too as well, and his brother played a little bit of baseball. And Rob, I had caught. He went to the same high school as me, and I had caught him many and many, many, many times. He was always on the plate. He might not have thrown the hardest, but he pretty much came to play every single time too as well. Smart guy. And I would say kind of an intelligence for the game too as well. That's what I remember. I do remember sometimes he got hit around and stuff like that, just because maybe he didn't have quite the big speed differences in some of his pitches and stuff like that. But generally, he was always there to play. And we had some great successes at Brock, and then also great successes when I played with him other times. So yeah, and all in all, good guy. He's in the similar business to me, but he deals with group benefits. So our paths don't really cross too much anymore, but nothing but fond memories about him, and hopefully for the future too as well.
Yeah, it was important to have guys like that because your team's not going to be a whole bunch of fireballers, and you need people that show that they understand the craft of pitching. Setting up.
I would say
things.
That's very good observation.
Yeah. So one of my favorite subjects is Ron Strow, who was a huge, tall. We've touched on Todd, so we probably don't need to go there. But Ron was also equally a big, tall guy who was all arms and legs. And I don't know truthfully, I have no idea what he threw. He was one of the only pitchers I ever saw that threw both a fastball or both a slider and a curveball. And everything seemed to spin and bend and bounce, and it was just nothing was straight. And he was a little bit wild. So what was it like? And a guy that was very quiet and kind of in his own head. So what do you remember about Ron?
Well, I think being quiet and either being very quiet or being very outspoken is kind of what you get sometimes in pitchers. A little bit quiet and conservative, or craziness and stuff like that, at least from what I've seen. But I mean, my memory is a little bit vague on the whole thing and stuff like that way. Yeah. But again, when you have multiple pitchers and stuff like that that are built like that, and if you know they're going to bounce it and stuff like that, it becomes very effective. You just got to be able to call the game for them and stuff like that. And I wish I could comment a little bit more and stuff like that, but it's a little while back. So, but there was, again, Ron, we had a great pitching staff of diverse guys, right? So,
yeah, we'll talk about the last one that you'd be very familiar with, and then we'll move on to a specific game with you and I in Montreal because I think it says a lot. But Joel Garden, obviously, is a freshman at Brock, and a very talented one, but a guy I think that's really learning to kind of handle adversity, because Brock was not the same as rep ball. You're going to have games where you got hit around and stuff, and I think Joel probably needed to lean on a whole bunch of people to find that next gear, and I think he developed that at Brock, but it took a lot of coaching. And tell me about your experiences with Joel and just seeing him mature as a person and as a pitcher. I think that was mostly what we were seeing over the course of the season.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comment, because Joel was an athlete, big, tall, lanky. His dad was a big guy too as well. Lots of experience for him from Burlington too as well. Great curveball. great curveball, overhand curveball, but also be able to hit the spots. And he was able to pick up some speed as he was kind of maturing a little bit more. And I think the maturity came, like you hit the nail on the head, kind of in his grade 13 year, and then he started maturing through the first year university and stuff. And I remember, if I'm correct, I think he left and went to Winthrop College afterwards.
Yeah.
And had a pretty successful career with them. But he was a guy that was getting stronger and stronger and stronger. He was one of our aces in high school too, as well. Like we had two aces, two guys that were aces that were in, and he was one of them. He was a good hard throwing righty. He was willing to accept what you threw down on the what your calls were and everything else too. I don't really recall him kind of waving me off too much or shaking me off too much and stuff like that. But always a good guy, and all those things, right? And a competitor too as well. And I think that's where you had some of the guys that are competitors that are still learning controlling emotions and so on and so forth too as well. But when you're a competitor, emotions come out different ways, right? Some guys will curl up about it, and some guys get angry. And I think Joel was more of that kind of getting on the angry side and stuff like that, because he was just frustrated with if he didn't do what he knows he can do.
Yeah, and I think it's for him, I think he was still very much a work in progress as opposed to a Chris who I don't see where Chris could learn maybe a pitch sequence or these kinds of things, but he was pretty much a finished product as a few of us were. And I think Joel just had so much upside. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, you knew he was going to get stronger if he gets into a program where he's lifting weights more often and doing all those types of things. And gets into a program where they're truly dedicating to the pitching staff. And I think that's probably what he got at Winthrop. Yeah,
and this comes full circle to you and I, because I never got a chance to really say it, but I really wanted to thank you for a game where I think for the first time all year you were healthy, and so we're pitching against playing the defending national champions in McGill, and under not great circumstances. It's cold out and it's snowing out and it's all that stuff, but I go out and probably I've thrown a few no-hitters in my life and a lot of good games, but it's under the circumstances. I'm there emotionally because I'm pitching for my brother who's passed away, and the program is here in Montreal competing in the national championships, and there's some extra responsibilities. You guide me through a game that I think McGill had 2 hits and they scored only 1 run, and I think we ended up winning 7-1. On a balk. I balked in a run, which is not shocking, but you just for whatever reason we were really in sync. Like the pitches were just. I remember thinking you would call a curveball to touch the top of the dirt, and I would be able to throw it there, which was unusual for me with a curveball. But if you called for a fastball outside, there was a lot of run on it, so there was a lot of weak contact all game long, and some strikeouts and stuff. But I think for both of us, being guys that were a little bit older, it was a great moment that we probably envisioned we would be having all year if you weren't hurt, where you kind of knew how to get the best out of a left-handed guy who, frankly, personality-wise, was a little bit different pitching than I was off the field. Like off the field, I think I'm pretty straightforward, but was pitching, it was just so intense. It's hard to kind of handle that kind of personality. Had you come across, and it's kind of a lefty thing. Lefties are always a little more quirky and a little more interesting, but even in a left-handed world where I know a fair number of them, because I would help tutor them after my career. I pitched on a lot of staffs. What's it like dealing with someone that's out to kill the opposition as opposed to beat them? Like that's a different kind of a personality where you're, I'm riding the umpire. If, I throw one that's an inch off and they call it a ball, I'm carping at the umpire, and you got to control the umpire likely as much as you do me. Very, very different type of pitcher, I would think, than our other guys. I was maybe the most intense of our pitchers.
I would say you're probably right. Yeah, I'd say you're probably right. But I mean, I don't think that's, I think it's the competitive nature, right? I mean, you're there to get a job done. You want to be successful. And I think that there's Steve Vautour was kind of like that too as well. That he almost became a madman on the mound. That when you're actually standing up there and you think about how intense you can be, and then you step off the field and you're done, and then you're like the nice happy-go-lucky guy and stuff like that. But I think that's where there was a guy that used to be play for the Toronto Blue Jays, and he was a Rule 5 guy. He
Okay.
was a right-handed pitcher and stuff like that. And I think he was a very happy-go-lucky guy off the field, but then his insane brain went off when he started pitching and stuff. And I think that's when you're dealing with different lefties, and lefties are also very, very quirky too as well. But when you're at that level and you're getting into that higher kind of age bracket, they're kind of like inability level. That intensity is important. The
Yeah.
controlled intensity, I think, is kind of what it is. And the way I look at it is that when I was catching, it was a team, right? And I think what makes catchers and pitchers successful is the pitchers understanding the confidence, or the catchers understanding and pitchers understanding that I have confidence in what you throw, to put the ball in the position, and you have confidence in me blocking it and being there to handle it, right?
Yeah.
And so you talk about your curveball bouncing and all that kind of stuff. Like there's reason why, and of course, I mean, a lot of times it was Coach McRae he wasn't calling the games, but we had certain spots where that ball must go if there's an 0-2 count,
Yep.
or if you have different counts. He was very, very strict about it. And so, which made it it made it what it is too as well.
Yeah, and a big contrast between our two lefties. Like Alex was was a big curveball kind of and I was a fastball guy. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine you guys. We look nothing alike from that perspective, and so lots of fun that way. Nate, you know, we kind of get through nationals, and then what's next for you? Because a lot of us didn't come back for a second year, and there's varying reasons as to why. Some of it is academic, some of this is a really intense scenario. I think in your case, you're still battling a horrific injury that makes it
Mm-hmm.
impossible to play
Yeah.
without being in pain. But what comes next for you in your baseball career? The decision to walk away from it, and what comes next in terms of your education and life?
Okay. Well, baseball, unfortunately, it kind of petered away for me for those after I left Brock and stopped playing at Brock. And you're right. I mean, that injury was a real painful thing, and I stepped away for, boy, it was what would you graduate, like 23 years old, maybe 22,
Yeah,
something like that, and then stepped away from it until I was 37. And
yeah,
then happened to bump into Fab Del Rio, which bumped into him in an office, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you come out and play?" And so, and like I said, then I stepped back onto the field, and all those awesome feelings of flooding in about how much I really enjoyed the game of baseball, and just like it was like I'm actually getting. It sounds crazy, but I'm actually getting goosebumps right now just thinking about how much I thoroughly enjoy the game. Um, and that was where we stepped away. And like I say, and one of the funniest things, and Fab and I laugh our asses off about it, is when I talked to him, because I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and I remember I was running from between second and third, and I remember envisioning myself as like an 18 or 19-year-old kid running and stepping on second base and running to third, and then all of a sudden both my hamstrings blew out, and I was like, oh. And I was like, and I remember we all have this when your parent says you feel like an 18-year-old, but your body isn't. And then so for me, that was kind of my last kick of the can. I ended up playing 2 years and didn't it didn't compete really at the level that I really was hoping to. Just had stepped away from it for such a long period of time, putting on 30 pounds, 35 pounds, or whatever that is, and just not doing what you do. But I mean, if it meant going out and playing catch and doing those types of things, I mean, I've got a son that doesn't know yet that he's a gifted athlete in every single way. So I'm hoping one day that he'll pick it up and decide to start doing something with it. But we'll see about that. But then I ended up graduating university. Obviously, I was Brock. I did take one course in my last year in the summertime to get my degree, and ended up getting my degree. Worked at a bar in St. Catharines called Ground Zero. And if you ever remember that bar, it was on Queenston, and it was a rough and tumble bar that I had to work at, and then selling windows and doors door to door, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, and then knocked on the door of a London Life guy, and the rest is history. And started working with London Life. Graduated Brock in August of 1997. And then started working for London Life in October of 1997.
Wow, that is London Life, runs really through the core of our team. We have Daryl Kemp and his brother. We have Rob Green that kind of came out of that world, and Joel has been in versions of financial planning or investment advising, and amazing. So very random, really, from that perspective. He just liked the cut of your jib when you came to his door.
I guess so. I think he liked. I honestly, I think there's a lot to be said about being part of a university program in athletics, regardless of what that is. And I think they also like the competitive nature of those types of things too, as well. And that if you can commit to a team and show dedication and so on and so forth, that and especially in financial services, you kind of got to be committed.
Yeah. So how do you end up building your own practice and business out of that? There's a lot of hard work, obviously, and maybe talk a little bit about what it's like being an entrepreneur and the pressures that come with that, and the ability to have a little more control over your life, even though that means a lot of long hours.
Yeah. You know what? It was really getting into it was when I because I was selling windows and doors door to door. It was a lot more difficult than, believe it or not, selling life insurance and investments to people. And my first years, I would say probably my first 10 years was really about kind of doing 9 to 9 half days Friday, because that was what our managers liked us to do. And then sometimes Saturday mornings, and really just kind of trusting the process. It sounds funny, but they have us doing different types of sales processes, and then teaching you how to talk to clients and everything from that way. And then I'm going to say in about 2007, I branched out on my own and opened up my own brokerage, which a lot of the guys, I think Rob Green did the same thing, kind of branched out and opened up his own brokerage, Green Benefits, if I remember correctly. And they kind of branched out on their own. And then it really, there's pros and cons with everything, right? I mean, you work hard. The idea was to work hard at the kind of the front side or the front half of the career, and then have a little bit more freedoms in years later on, and years gone by and stuff. But it's been great. It's been great. It's been great for my family. It's allowed me to have the freedoms that I wanted to do. It's allowed me to have good income too as well. And I'm just doing it, right. And I mean, one thing, I lost my dad when I was 37. He died at 63, and that was, for me, I didn't ever want to be a guy that was sort of sitting there looking in the rearview mirror, wishing I would have done something. That's one of the reasons why my wife and I, Tara, decided to buy a cottage when we were younger, so that we could do that. And so we weren't 65 looking in the rearview mirror saying, hey, I wish I would have done that when I was in my 30s. So family was not growing quite the way we wanted it to go. And so we made the decision to pull the trigger and enjoy that aspect of kind of growing, right?
Yeah, and it's a big motivator, and I'm sad that you lost your dad so young. That's a very young age, especially now. And when we've seen the lifespan jump up 12 years in our lifetime. It's hard to believe that, but
Yeah, it's unbelievable, actually.
So, and you've had to deal with some, I think, really significant challenges to your business. We had a financial meltdown in 2009 that was not great. And now we're living in an era where there's a massive amount of wealth transference as people's parents, unfortunately pass and these kinds of things. But we're doing it in an era where we have high inflation rates and lots of uncertainty in the economy. Your clients look to you to just keep them calm and keep them on a plan, very similar to catching a pitcher who's probably a little bit unwinding a little bit. Tell me what skills were transferable from the ball field to your business.
Yeah, I think one of the things is sort of staying. It's funny is that my personality, over the years has been very I can be very loud, very boisterous. I can be those types of things. But what I'm like, kind of like at home and in my personal life, can be very different from being in my professional life. Whereas I might be loud and boisterous in my office per se, and then I'm very calm and cool when I'm inside of my client meetings. And we had an example of a client that we dealt with, and I call him a little bit of a nervous Nelly, is the way I see him. Wonderful, wonderful man. But back in October, the market had changed drastically. We had put $1 million in for his investments and stuff, and he was quite concerned. And he was really, he wanted to kind of like withdraw everything and so on and so forth. And kind of having to coach him to say, hey, listen, buddy, if the investment goes down that quickly in 30 days, could it not come back in 30 days? And then kind of months later, sitting there and having that exact conversation as my client kind of edges up to the edge of the bridge and wants to kind of jump off and stuff like that. And kind of remembering, saying, hey, listen, this is where you were before. This is where we are today. Okay. Or this is what you threw last time, and this is what we're going to throw this time. And my assistant, I have someone that works for me, dedicated. And I remember she said to me one time, Nate, there's two things that we need to manage. Okay. We need to manage the client's money. Okay. And the dollars. Then we need to manage their emotion. And she said that to me, and it was quite a profound conversation I had with the client afterwards with that. And it was really about that. And if you think about you saying that with pitching, and you think about your different personalities of the different pitchers and stuff like that, I mean, I think about Todd, because he was just like, I just put my finger down, and he didn't know enough to even question what I was asking him to do. He just did it. And then some other guys that were more experienced would question those things, or they would say, I don't want that. Right. And so if you think about pitching, that you're managing different personalities, and the same thing in the investment world. And so emotion and the connection to the numbers is kind of the sort of the same thing that emotions can, like if you look at Alek Manoah as a pitcher, his emotions probably got the most of him and stuff like that. Then it started impacting him how he's performing on the field. And so sometimes there's that disconnect that you got to actually do too as well. So
yeah, it's there's a lot of youth that spills into it, which kind of makes me look back 30 years and also remember that we're all a bunch of young guys and learning and absorbing. You absorb so much structure from McRae and being uber professional. Big change.
Yeah.
Tim Topping was always Hakuna Matata, like the pitching coach that comes out and is smiling and says something to make you grin or whatever. You have Briggs Jude, who was kind of like everyone's uncle. He's like,
yeah.
I'd always look at his mustache and go, "That's a great mustache."
He sure hasn't changed. I mean, he looks like he's a little bit thinner than he used to be, but he sure hasn't changed much.
No, and Coach Mark LePage, who worked with you catchers a lot. Mark was, always had a little smile going, but he just really put in the work. And, Jeff Lounsbury, we've made a lot of fun of because of his bad fashion sense, but Jeff was a great-hearted guy and worked hard at everything. but I remember our teammates just so vividly, and it's you see the qualities that you had as a player make their way through 30 years later as a business owner and as a father and as a cat owner. I mean, Nate, I think there's a lot to be said for our experiences there translating. The only other person I ever knew that went door to door selling siding and windows was Rodney Dangerfield. Oh. And, funny enough, went on to, he only became a stand-up comedian in his 40s and eventually was the highest paid person in all of comedy when he did those 2 movies. So it says a lot for perseverance and will and determination, just like you battling through a groin injury. What would you say you want to accomplish next? I think you feel like you've probably done some pivots in your life that seem healthy, and you live in the cottage in a more balanced life. But what is it you want to get ticked off in the next 5 to 10?
Boy, well, I think on a business level, I'd like to kind of build my business further. I'd like to. We're in the process of doing a couple acquisitions of advisors' businesses, so I'd like to kind of get those things out of the way, and build a strong kind of brokerage and franchise that eventually I can either decide to hand it off to my son if he decides to go into financial services, or like I say, continue to service my clients and then maybe eventually sell off the brokerage or do whatever. I mean, I like my job. There's aspects of it that I don't like, but generally speaking, I like my job. And it's more of a career than I say job. But and then maybe eventually sell it off or continue to maybe reduce my hours down and something like that. That's kind of where I kind of see that kind of thing going. Now, that's more of like a 10-year kind of program and stuff like that. I'm not sure if I could ever just sort of sit back and kind of not do my work, or I have to do something. I think is the way to do it. Personally, I to be honest with you, I just want to continue to be the best dad I can try to be for my father, and I mean, I for my son, I should say, and I kind of be a good husband to my wife, and I'd like to get my kid playing baseball, to be honest with you. And that's, if I could make that a priority. I invested a lot of time in him when he was a kid. Many hours a day sitting there with him. And then one day he just said, I don't want to play anymore. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I honestly just hopefully get him to be as a good boy, a good young man, and be as successful as he can. And say that was kind of, that to me is probably is where I kind of see my kind of goals are and stuff like that. And he's a little bit of a work in progress and stuff. And we've been blessed that he's healthy and he's intelligent and he's challenging and all those wonderful things that fatherhood do and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, fatherhood is what caused my hair to go. So it's a couple of daughters.
Let me ask you a question. Do you ever remember the day that you were losing your hair and you came to the realization you were going bald?
I do. So it was right before I was going to get married. I was just like, I had gone to a. This is going to sound so outrageous, but thank you for asking this question because it's hilarious.
Every bald guy's got that story.
Oh, yeah. So I had to drive in a friend to, they were taking some sort of course in Toronto, and I was living in London with my soon-to-be wife at the time, and I needed a haircut. But I've been kind of doing the comb forward thing and kind of just trying to cover what was increasingly becoming something you could see through. And I walked into a place on Queen Street. This very flamboyant stylist came up to me and goes, "My God, you look like an airline stewardess. We have to change this." And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "This isn't going to work. I could, so he just said, trust me, take a take a belt of this. So he gave me a shot of tequila, and he said, just close your eyes, and when you wake up, you'll be fine. Just trust me. And so I take the shot of tequila, and I wake up, and he shaved my head completely down. And he said, you look way better, because before it was looking a little pathetic. And trust me, I am, he was just very super friendly guy, but took me by the arm and proceeded to, so the worst part is, the worst part, though, it was in May, I think, or May or June. So I'd been out in the sun already. Oh, so when you first shave your head, it looks like you're wearing a white bathing cap, because it takes a while for you to even it out, right? So, but I thank him for that, because it was getting a little bit. I wasn't quite at the ridiculous comb over stage, but I was using a lot of product to just keep everything forward, and it was just bad. So
sounds familiar.
Sometimes, yeah. So that happened when I was 27. So there you go, right?
Jeez, so you still had it, eh? I think mine was third year university, but I do remember when I noticed I was going bald. It was my girlfriend in high school, and it was cable net. I don't know if you remember, Burlington used to have this sports or like local TV station called Cable Net, and they were filming a Nelson High School baseball game, and I was catching, and my helmet fell off. And I remember seeing my girlfriend at the time taped it on a VCR, and I remember seeing the crown of my head right here.
Oh, Jesus.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going bald. And then I used to go to the Penn Center, and I would go and spend like $60 on a haircut or $70 on a haircut. And I used to do like the Caesar haircut, where I was trying to pull it forward and kind of make it look like I was doing it. Yeah. And then one of my buddies just handed me a set of razors one day, and he goes, get rid of it all. And that was the last time I had it. And time.
Yeah, me too. But I got to tell you, there's times where I really like it, right? Like I don't have to invest, a small fortune in hair product for sure. But, shampoo lasts an awful long time, right? Yeah. Like it's all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, razors. And, I knock it down in the shower. So the water bill's a little higher because I'm in there, and, but that's tons of fun and kind of fun to tackle that. Nate, it's almost exactly 6 months. We're going to be hopping back onto a field to try to kick the crap out of McMaster one more time. Yeah. Are you looking forward to getting back in uniform, even just for the fun of hanging out in the dugout with the guys? And
first of all, I don't even know if I could fit into a uniform. I'm not my my 34-inch waist anymore. So let's just say a jersey and a pair of track pants might be the best one for me, though. I'll sew some stripes onto the side.
I'll get you the Thanksgiving pants from Joey from Friends. It'll be great.
What I'm looking forward to doing is actually seeing the guys. I am looking forward to just throwing the baseball around, those types of things, catching up, seeing what's going on down there. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really looking forward to kind of going behind home plate, even if you're actually even thinking about that, because I'm not sure I know I have the ability to get down there. It's whether I have the ability to get back up.
Back up?
I throw a little bit, but that's just because I got a 12-year-old at home. But all in all, it's more of probably just to see some of the guys and have a good time and just kind of get on the field and kind of joke around a little bit and take nothing too serious and just really those are the things that we're really kind of just have a chuckle, right?
Yeah, we'll piece it together. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel funny enough, that we're all kind of dreading the fact that we could literally need to be sponsored by St. John Ambulance and need oxygen on both benches. But I also have this funny feeling that when you put, in our case, 35, it'll be 30. We'll have a big roster to be able to make it through more than 2 innings. Yeah. But you put guys in uniform and you kind of get them back together. Funny enough, I think there'll be enough competitiveness that it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And it won't be like a recreational slow pitch game. You know, it won't be anything like that. The McMaster guys are starting to scare me. They all seem to be still playing or, in very good shape because they are a phys ed teacher. And, the only phys ed teacher that we've got is Brian Simmons. And so Sims seems quite capable of still playing, but he had shoulder surgery, so he can't throw. So, we have a few of that. But I think it's just to be able to go on the field at George Taylor Community Park again and, in the same hideous 1970s style uniforms that we had back in the day, and have a little bit of fun, see those coaches, have Coach Kemp insult us a little bit, have Coach McRae probably tell us to run in and out of that batter's box after we strike out. Those kinds of things are priceless, and that part I'm really looking forward to. And we get to do some good, which I think is something we all like to do. So, Nate, thank you so much for today. And listen, we'll get together for a beer well before we're in St. Catharines.
Yeah.
Because I'm down your way all the time. But I really appreciate it. And
it's been fun, buddy.
Well, the smell